Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, anyways, man, I am going to do the week two picks overall for NFL week two. So, last week I think was quite an interesting week. I think actually not just me, but probably quite a bit of people got their predictions wrong. I know that it probably was one of the all time worst uh, bet lines for me personally. I think I got literally exactly 50% correct. There was a lot of picks I ended up getting wrong, but you know what? It's week one. So now we kind of have more of an educated guess to go on. Anyways, we're going to take a look at these teams overall. All games, all 16 games that are going to be happening in week two. I'm going to give you my picks and my reasoning why, and let's get into it. So, of course, today is Wednesday. It is September 15th. Tomorrow is Thursday Night Football. Not necessarily the greatest game out there, in my opinion, but of course, there's going to be a lot of people watching, with the Washington football team and New York Giants. In my opinion, I have to go with the Washington football team on this one. It looks like their defense still is somewhat okay. Obviously, they did just lose to the Chargers as of recent, but Justin Herbert, I do think, is a very special quarterback, and I think overall some of the offense that he has around him, I do think they were able to help him as well. I think the Washington football team, I think overall that they're going to have a little bit more over the New York Giants. Taylor Heineke, I believe, also is a starter for Washington. I believe Taylor Heineke, he actually was on my team at one point in time, the Carolina Panthers. And let me just say this about Taylor Heineke. I never was unimpressed with him. That's what I'll say. If I'm not thinking about the right guy, then I correct myself. But when it comes down to it overall, I do believe Taylor Heineke. I've seen him multiple times before. I've never been, not impressed with him. So what I will say is this: he doesn't seem elite, but with this being in Washington, with this overall, being a home game for them, and them all around being possibly the more complete team, I'm going to pick Washington. We'll see overall what happens. So the next game overall that we got to talk about. Now, of course, this is my team here, the Carolina Panthers. This is happening at Bank Stadium overall, the Carolina Stadium. And this is going to be versus New Orleans, the New Orleans Saints, of course. The New Orleans Saints, in my opinion, they are one of the more talented teams. I was kind of wondering how they were going to look after, or excuse me, I guess after they put Jameis Winston in the starting position. We'll see what he does. Carolina, I think overall that they're actually somewhat of a tough team. I don't think Carolina is going to make a Super Bowl run or anything like that, but what I will say is this: if Carolina somehow were able to make the playoffs this year, I would not be shocked. I don't think that they have necessarily all the pieces that they need completely yet, but Sam Darnold, I thought that he looked very, very good in week one. I thought that he was making some very good throws. The offensive line actually looks more improved, but New Orleans overall, they're a very, very tough team. They have excellent offense, very good defense as well. Sean Payton, as always, offensive genius. This is going to be a very tough game for Carolina to win, I believe. I think I got to pick New Orleans on this one. Jameis Winston looked very, very good. We'll see what happens in this game. Carolina. But of course, that was with Ron Rivera. Maybe some of the former Carolina players, they maybe know how Jameis Winston works, but this is going to be a little bit of a different offense. This is going to be a Sean Payton offense, so we'll kind of see what happens here. I have to go with New Orleans on this one, and I would not be surprised if they blew out Carolina. I would not be surprised if this was a close game. I wouldn't be 100% shocked if the Carolina Panthers somehow pulled off a slight, point lead and upset, but I'm going to more than likely say it's probably not going to happen. So we'll see what happens. I gotta have New Orleans. I think that they all around have the much better team. Jameis Winston looked phenomenal in week one. I think he's going to continue that. So let's see what happens. Okay, so this next game, the Cincinnati Bengals at the Chicago Bears Stadium at Soldier Dome, I believe is what the dome is. If I'm wrong about that, then correct me. But anyways, this is a very interesting game. Chicago ended up losing their first game. Unfortunately, they faced the very, very talented LA Rams when it came down to probably one of the top three most talented teams in the league, if you really want to go there. They didn't look necessarily horrible, in my opinion, but they didn't necessarily look great either. Cincinnati was kind of the same thing. I think that they had a home game against Minnesota. If I'm wrong about that, then someone correct me. But when it comes down to the overall bottom line is this. Cincinnati, man, Joe Burrows, or I think I'm pronouncing his name right. he did look pretty decent in week one. There's still some faults that I see there, and I certainly don't think Cincinnati is the most complete team. This really is a tough choice for me. Andy Dalton for Chicago, he's the leader on the offense right now, and I just don't know if Andy Dalton is going to lead them past Cincinnati. They did get a very tight win over Minnesota, and Minnesota, I don't even know if they're the team that Chicago is. But when it comes down to, man, this might be one of the harder games for me to predict on this. It's really, really tight, and that's why you see 46% on this one. If I am going to have to pick on this one, you know what? This is a risky pick, but I'm going to have to go with Chicago. I'm going to go with the Chicago Bears just because overall their defense, maybe they might be able to do something to the Cincinnati offense. I think that it's possible they may have a slightly better defense than the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see overall what happens. Maybe I'm wrong about that. We'll just have to see. I'm going to go with a risky pick here. I'm going to go with Chicago Bears. We'll see what happens. Okay, so this is the next game. The Houston Texans versus the Cleveland Browns. This was actually one of my risky picks that I got right in week one. I picked the Houston Texans over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I, for whatever reason, thought Deshaun Watson was starting. I thought that he still was going to start even with all the, alleged sexual assault cases that are going on with him right now. But, I guess he wasn't. But anyways, Tyrod Taylor, he ended up taking his place. He did a very good job. And they pretty much dominated the Jacksonville Jaguars for a certain amount of the time. But they also look like the worst team in the league right now. This is in Cleveland. And Cleveland, for now, last season, they looked like a very, very talented team. And they're kind of, there. And if you're not careful with them overall, they can really, deliver a punch to the mouth when it comes down to it that can surprise you. And Cleveland, they're just a completely more, talented team than Houston. I'm not saying that it's 100% impossible that Houston would win this game. I just don't personally see it. We'll see what happens. Cleveland, obviously, though, is the 100% more talented team, more talented on offense, and the defense is also phenomenal, even though they did allow a lot of points against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs debatably have the most talented offense inside the whole entire NFL. Either them or Tampa Bay, some would even debate LA, so it's up to you. The Rams, of course. But anyways, when it comes down to it, I obviously got to go with my boys, the Cleveland Browns here when it comes down to it. I think overall that they're going to win this game. I think they should win it quite handily. We'll see overall what happens. That's my pick for that game. We'll see what happens. So you have this next game, the LA Rams versus the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts had somewhat of a competitive game against the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think Carson Wentz looked really bad, but I do think there is some certain things that need to be improved. The Seattle Seahawks, I think overall that they're a very decent team, but I don't think that they're going to make it much farther than the second round of this year. They're kind of in the same predicament as last year, in my opinion. Really, to me, this is really an easy choice, even though this is in Indianapolis. I would not be surprised if this was a competitive game, let me say that. But the offenses look phenomenal so far in the LA Rams, even though obviously the Bears are not necessarily one of the top-tier teams. But they do have some decent defensive players on there. Excuse me. And the LA Rams, I think they're going to look phenomenal. I think they're going to look good in this game, even if this is in Indianapolis. I think overall that the LA Rams, I think that they got this one. They still look like they debatably have the number one defense in the league. That's a traumatizing defense that they have. And on top of that, the offense looks very, very good. Matthew Stafford got off to a very, very good start. Now, we're not really going to know how great the LA Rams are, in my opinion, until they face some of those really good teams like the Seattle Seahawks or Arizona Cardinals. That's going to be more interesting overall to see how they react to them when it comes down to it. That's going to be really interesting. That's when, I want to see how well do they handle them. But yeah, that's going to be very, very interesting. But I got to go with the LA Rams on this one. We'll see overall what happens with that. But I got the LA Rams. Okay, so you have this next one. The Denver Broncos versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. If you're asking my opinion overall, what do I think of Trevor Lawrence? I think Trevor Lawrence is very talented. He obviously, was not used to getting blitzed the way that he was in the first game. He did throw 3 horrid interceptions that were very clearly should have not been thrown. But he's a rookie when it comes down to it. I'll give him some, a little bit of a pass. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I kind of judge my quarterbacks by their third season in. What do they do by that third season in? And we'll see what happens. Anyways, Denver, they're a decently talented team. I don't think that they're going to win any more than 6 or 7 games this year. But when it comes down to the overall, Denver, they are still a very competitive team. They still, can, like I would say earlier, they can punch you in the mouth real early if you're not careful. And on top of that, their defense, I don't think is the worst out there. And Denver, I do think that they have more weapons than Jacksonville. I think that they're going to beat Jacksonville. I got to go with my guys, Denver, on this one. I think that they're going to beat Jacksonville. To be honest with you, Jacksonville, they look like they might potentially be the worst team in the league when it comes down to it. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, so this next game, the Buffalo Bills versus the Miami Dolphins, this is going to be in Miami. There's a certain amount of people that are picking the Buffalo Bills 86-14, and I completely understand that. The Buffalo Bills, I believe, are a decent amount more talented than Miami, but let me say this. Don't be surprised that this is a competitive game. I don't think the Miami Dolphins are really, really bad. They could possibly make a playoff spot this year, so we'll see what happens. I was actually a little bit disappointed with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills in the first game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I do understand that the Pittsburgh Steelers, they are a very, very tough team. I still was a bit disappointed. I thought that they could have been better. I thought Josh Allen could have been better. But of course, that was one of the top defenses overall, so I can't judge them too harshly. What I'll say is this. Hopefully the Buffalo Bills, hopefully they just don't roll in here and, think that this is just a guaranteed win. Hopefully they take the Dolphins seriously. Hopefully they say, okay, we're down one. We really got to get up there, when it comes down to it. So let's get in here. Let's dominate them. Let's try to win. I got to go with my guys, the Buffalo Bills. I think that they're very talented. The defense, I think, is decent. I wouldn't say that it's a top 5 defense in the league, but they are very decent. The offense as well, also decently talented. Josh Allen looks, even though he had a couple mistakes in the first game, I believe, or didn't look overly impressive, I still think he's a very great quarterback. We'll see what happens. So we have this next game, New England versus New York Jets. I got to go with my guys, the New England Patriots. Overall, Mac Jones, I didn't really see exactly how he looked like in week 1, but he didn't necessarily look bad. The New York Jets, actually, when I take a look at them, they very well potentially could be the worst team in the league. So we'll see what happens there. That'll be very, very interesting. But anyways, when it comes down to it, man, I got to go with my guys, New England. I think overall that all in all, they have a better team. I know that this is going to be in New York, but when it comes down to it, it's going to be, I think that it's going to be a decent game for New England. I wouldn't be surprised if it's somewhat competitive, but I got to expect New England to pull out of this. Bill Belichick, very great coach still to this day. New York Jets, they just haven't really had a whole lot going for them for years upon years, really, when it comes down to it. So let's move on. San Francisco 49ers versus the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles kind of surprised a certain amount of people in the first week. I was a little bit surprised as well because I also picked the Atlanta Falcons. I probably should have picked the Eagles. Jalen Hurts, he doesn't look necessarily too bad with the Eagles. I'm not going to say that he looks fantastic, but he doesn't look bad either. The San Francisco 49ers, I believe they still have Jimmy Garoppolo as their starting quarterback. They did look okay against the Detroit Lions. They scored 40-something points. They also allowed 30-something points a little bit later on. So that's going to be interesting. This is in Philadelphia. I'm actually going to make this pick, and a certain amount of people may disagree. I'm going to pick the Philadelphia Eagles, and a certain amount of people may disagree with me on that because I'm not sure how much I really trust that San Francisco defense. We'll see overall what happens with that. I got to go with my guys, the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll see what happens. Okay, so this is the next game overall. Fantastic game in my opinion. Las Vegas Raiders, who just got an upset win against the Baltimore Ravens. They looked pretty damn phenomenal in my opinion against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers on this one. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers overall, I think their defense is really, really tight. The offense still, someone has something going. What I'm going to say is this. If the Las Vegas Raiders, if they somehow pulled out of this game, I wouldn't be overly shocked. But when it comes down to what I am going to say is this. I think personally that the Pittsburgh Steelers probably are going to win this game. We'll see what happens overall. But I got to go with them. I think they have the more complete team. If Roethlisberger makes the mistake of throwing a couple of picks, which sometimes he does in some of the bigger games, the Raiders can pull out of this. But I do think Pittsburgh, I do think they're one of the more complete teams. We'll see overall what happens with them. Okay, so here we go with some of these other games. Minnesota Vikings at the Arizona Cardinals Stadium. This is an easy pick for me. I got to go with the Arizona Cardinals. They completely tarnished the Tennessee Titans. Now, apparently the Titans, they didn't have a lot of their returning players, so that could have possibly been it. But the Arizona Cardinals, they looked absolutely phenomenal. They absolutely tore apart the Tennessee Titans, a team that I still think is more complete probably than the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see overall what happens. But Minnesota, for the past few years, I've just never trusted them ever since they got Kirk Cousins. And a lot of their offense, I think, really has been down. Adam Thielen, overall, he still is very, very good for them. There is some defensive players that are still very decent, but they've just lost a lot of their pieces when it comes down to it. I don't think that this is a team that's a playoff contender. I think Arizona is majorly going to be a playoff contender this year, and they are probably in the toughest division out there right now, the NFC West. I got to go with my guys, the Arizona Cardinals. I think that they're going to dominate this game. I would not be surprised if there was a complete blowout. I wouldn't be surprised if it was only a win by about 13, 14 points, but we'll see what happens. I'm expecting at the minimum a win by at least 14 points. We'll see what happens. Okay, so this next game, the Atlanta Falcons at Tampa Bay. I got to go with Tampa Bay here. I think that this is an obvious pick. Atlanta, man, they were just able to do nothing against the Philadelphia Eagles. Their offense wasn't able to do anything. Overall, their defense really wasn't able to do anything. I don't see them beating Tampa Bay, which you can debate is the most talented team inside the whole entire league right now. I got to go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, especially if it's in Tampa Bay. They're on a roll right now. They just beat a very good team in the Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion. I don't see how Atlanta, which in my opinion is a very lethargic team, I don't see how they beat Tampa Bay. That's just my personal opinion out there. We'll see what happens. But I got to have Tampa Bay winning this game. I think that's obvious. Okay. So the Dallas Cowboys versus the LA Chargers. This is going to be interesting. This is a very big test for Justin Herbert. It's also a little bit of a test for Dak Prescott. I didn't necessarily mind what I seen from the LA Chargers defense in the first game. Justin Herbert, I still thought looked very, very good. This could be a back and forth game if the defenses are not careful when it comes down to it. So this is going to be a very interesting game. This is going to be in LA in the Chargers Stadium when it comes down to it. Dallas, in my opinion, is the more talented team. So I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys. What I will say is this. Would not be surprised if the Chargers just pulled out of this. One thing I will say about Dallas, like I said it in video though, I think that they're very talented this year, and I think that they really have to take advantage of all their pieces. I thought the defense looked good in week 1. I think they need to keep playing like that. And I thought the offense looked very great, so they just need to keep it rolling. They need to overall find ways to win. They need to find ways to win in those tight situations. We'll see what happens. I have possible faith in Dak Prescott, but I got to see him give results. You know, we'll excuse me. We'll see what happens. But anyways, I got to go with Dallas. Okay, so we're now down to the final 3 games. So here we go, Seattle versus Tennessee. Unfortunately, this is not as good of a game as it probably would have been last year. Seattle, in my opinion, they're a very good team, especially because of Russell Wilson, but they're not going to win the Super Bowl, in my opinion, anytime soon. They're about a first round to second round team, but Tennessee, they don't even look like a playoff contender right now. And a lot of their players apparently did not return when it came down to it. I got to go with the Seattle Seahawks, especially this is in Seattle. Seattle is one of those areas where if they're home, they have a major advantage usually when it comes down to it. I got to go with the Seattle Seahawks. I got to go with the Hawks on this one. I think Russell Wilson, I think he's going to deliver another great performance. I think overall that he's pretty much going to tear him up. If Tennessee somehow were to upset the Seattle Seahawks, wouldn't be overly surprised, but I see a very low likelihood of that happening. So I got to go with the Seattle Seahawks. We'll see overall what happens. It'll be very, very interesting. Okay, so here we go. Sunday Night Football. This is actually an extraordinary game. I don't mind this game at all. Kansas City Chiefs versus the Baltimore Ravens. We just seen the Baltimore Ravens lose to the Las Vegas Raiders. I was a bit surprised on that one. What I'm going to say is this. You know, this Kansas City Chiefs and Baltimore Ravens rivalry, I guess if you want to call it, because they're two of the top teams in the AFC. It kind of reminds me of the rivalry between Cam Newton and Russell Wilson. Cam Newton was able to get a couple against Russell Wilson, but 90% of the time Russell Wilson was usually able to beat Cam Newton. Sometimes you can say overall because he had the more complete team, but also often because he made less mistakes with the football, and all in all, he was just more talented of a quarterback than Cam Newton was. And I see that same dynamic here. Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion, you can debate, is the most talented quarterback in the league. He's had 2 straight Super Bowl appearances. They won the first game, in my opinion, possibly against a more talented team in the Cleveland Browns. Lamar Jackson, I want to see how he comes back after that first loss against the Las Vegas Raiders. Bottom line is this. I got to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think their defense looks bad at all. Their offense looks just as spectacular as it was when it came down to it. The Baltimore Ravens, they're working on some things, but like I said, that's not always a guarantee that it's going to lead you anywhere. Unfortunately for the Baltimore Ravens, I think they start off 0-2. I got to go with the Kansas City Chiefs. This isn't Baltimore, so would not be 100% surprised if Baltimore pulled off the upset. But I got to agree with the odds here. I think Kansas City, I think they're going to win. I think they got the more talented quarterback. I think they got the more intelligent quarterback. And I think that is the main difference here because they're both extremely talented teams. And then here goes the last game. The Detroit Lions versus the Green Bay Packers. I actually predicted the Detroit Lions to win in week 1 over the 49ers. I know a lot of people may think that that is foolish, but I was kind of just going with a random, gut decision when it came down to it. And I actually was not completely wrong that I thought the game would be competitive because it actually ended up being close in the end. I didn't mind what I seen from Jared Goff in the first week, but the defense is horrid from the Detroit Lions when it comes down to it. The offense is not super duper explosive either. The Green Bay Packers, they looked very ill prepared in the first game against the New Orleans Saints. But the New Orleans Saints, in my opinion, they're probably one of the most top 5 to 6 talented, rosters inside the whole entire NFL. So I'm not completely surprised there. And on top of that, the Packers, they've always had a tough time against the Saints anyways within the past, I don't know how many, years. So it is what it is. Ever since Sean Payton has been offensive coordinator pretty much. But, we'll see what happens. Anyways, I got to go with the Green Bay Packers on here. I would not be surprised if the Detroit Lions ended up pulling up the upset. Sometimes they do against Green Bay. There's certain times overall where they will make the first game a hell of a game for them. So would not be surprised if the Detroit Lions pulled off the upset here. We'll see what happens. Jared Goff, I don't think is a bad QB. I just don't know if he's elite. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers can pick up his game better than what it was last week. He was absolutely horrid last week. So we'll see overall what happens. But anyways, guys, those are my picks. Let's see overall how many I get right this week. Let's save them real quick overall. So these are my picks. I got Washington, I got New Orleans, I got Chicago, Cleveland, LA Rams, Denver Broncos, Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots, Philadelphia Eagles, Pittsburgh Steelers, Arizona Cardinals, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Dallas Cowboys, Seattle Seahawks, Kansas City Chiefs, and of course the Green Bay Packers. So those are my picks, saving them in right now. Those are my 16 picks for this week. Let's see how many I get right. Let me know what your predictions are down below, and I'll talk to y'all later.